Let's get it going. Let's have a little conversation um, about love. I'm back. I didn't know if I was going to do another video. Like I said, if you watched the last one, if you endured the last one, um, I typically don't, post videos consistently, but, you know, new year, trying a new thing, so we'll see how it goes. So I'm back. I'm back again. And I figured I'd talk today about love. We talk about love, about sex, right? Which we understand when we talk about love, we're talking about something that's more emotional. Whereas when we talk about sex, we're talking about something more physical. But today, I wanted to talk about sex more so from the side of physics. And just talk about some of the physics of sex, some of the biology involved in sex, and the parallels that you find between sexual intercourse and physics, within the universe. So much so that it may sound funny to say, but you could say that the universe itself is in a constant stage or form of sexual intercourse, being a balance between two opposite but equal forces, right? Positive and negative forces. So you could argue that the universe is in a state of constant sexual intercourse, and even go as far as to say it is in a constant cosmic orgasm. But now that, of course, is sounding, a little psychedelic, a little too woo for some people. So we'll keep it on the ground level. But yeah, I did want to talk about love, and also talk about sex, and draw some of the parallels between the physics and biology that we find in sex and what we also find in physics. And again, if you're familiar with physics, right? And here's the thing. As I said in my last video, I talk about spirituality, I talk about mythology, I talk about religion, but you gotta involve your physics. So hopefully, if you're listening to me, you do enjoy, or you're not too turned off by, conversations about physics and quantum mechanics, and, conversations about math, and nothing complicated, because I'm not a mathematician by any stretch of the imagination. So I don't want to fool you, and make you think that we'll be talking about some complicated mathematical equations. No, that it's nothing like that. But we will talk about the basics, the fundamentals of math. You know what I mean? Because there's so much in just the fundamentals of math that's just mind blowing. You know what I mean? It's mind boggling. So we will discuss the fundamentals of math and all that. So I say all that to say, we're going to talk a little bit about, physics. You know what I mean? We have to start there, and talking about the universe. And as we were talking about last week, when we were just discussing the wave and what the wave is, where you have these two equal but opposite forces that kind of work against each other, but then they come back and are attracted to one another. And when they come together, they neutralize each other, and they bring about balance. In that moment, you have everything and nothing at the same time. It is in a state of superposition, as we were talking about last week when we touched very briefly on quantum mechanics. But again, we are again, because as I said before, it's inescapable. The wave pattern is a constant throughout the entire universe. So you can't talk about anything in the universe without involving the wave pattern. in some way, some shape, in some form. And when you see that, it really is enlightening. It really does open up the world to you in some really fascinating ways. But talking about the universe, we understand that the universe is a balance between positive and negative energy. In fact, Steve Hawkins had posited some decades ago that because the universe should be a perfect balance between negative energy, which is gravity, and positive energy, which is matter, that means that all of the energy in the known universe and beyond should always equate to absolute zero. You know what I mean? Like everything in the universe, our our solar system, the suns, and all the our sun and all the other suns, and all the gigantic planets and the black holes and all this massive amount of energy that you have in the universe. When you total it all up, and it comes out to be a perfect balance between negative and positive forces, you get complete balance. You get absolute nothing, which makes perfect sense when you think about the omniscient, when you think about, God, because God has to be everything and nothing at the same time. You know what I mean? And that may sound wild. That may sound pretty wild. How can God be everything and nothing at the same time? Not to delve too far down that rabbit hole, but here's a quick thing just to consider. If we say that God is omniscient, right? That God knows all things, right? Past, present, and future. God is omniscient. There is nothing that God cannot know throughout the entire universe, right? If we say that, then it stands to reason, if God is omniscient and knows everything, then there is nothing new that God can know. And by that very definition, everything in the universe has to be at a complete standstill from the perspective of God, from the perspective of an entity that is omniscient and all knowing. Everything would have to be at a complete standstill. And that makes sense when we think about it from the perspective of physics, right? Because think about light, right? Light, as we understand it, moves around a little over 186,000 miles per second. But at that speed, nothing can move faster, right? Nothing can move faster than the speed of light. And the reason why that is so is because as you accumulate speed, you also pick up resting mass. And at that speed, at the speed of light, at 186 whatever thousand miles a second, at that speed, your resting mass would be everywhere in the universe. So at that speed, there's nowhere else you can go. You're everywhere. You know what I mean? So if you were moving at the speed of light, if it were possible, everything would be still. Time would stand still, which again brings us back to the omniscient one, which can never know anything new. And so from the perspective of an all-knowing God, time and everything has to be at a complete standstill. From the perspective of an omniscient God, the entire universe is deterministic, right? From the perspective of ignorant man, there's free will, or at least there's the illusion of free will. But again, from the perspective of an all-knowing God, that's not so. So, having all knowledge brings about complete stillness. And if everything is at a complete standstill, by the very definition of not moving, it ceases to exist. It doesn't die. If something isn't moving, then it just ceases to be. Life itself is movement. You know what I mean? Everything is always, nothing, is ever still. Life is always, it's always moving. So if ever anything stops, it ceases to be, it ceases to exist. That wave reaches complete equilibrium, and by being completely neutralized, it's gone, you know? And so again, I say that because by the very definition of God being and knowing everything, God is so sufficient that he is insufficient, which he has to be. God has to be, everything and nothing at the same time. And please forgive me for using the masculine gender, which I do have a tendency to do from time to time. A lot of that is just the Christian um, upbringing. You know what I mean? But we do understand when we're talking about God, we're talking about a universal mind. We're not really talking about a being in the sense of a body, but we're talking about an energy, an intellect, something that is immaterial or intangible. So in that state, God is neither male nor female, and God is also the perfect balance between male and female. Both of those male and female energies. So again, everything and nothing simultaneously. This is God by definition. So I talk about all of that because again, we come back to sex and what it is. Where with sex, once again, we're dealing with energies. You have the male, which is the masculine energy, and as a masculine force of energy, as a positive energy, um, we say positive because positive is repulsion, and the male transmits or repulses his seed into the woman. You know what I mean? The male ejaculates, his sperm is sent outward into the woman. The woman, on the other hand, she is in the negative position, whereas she subtracts or she receives the male. Right, the male has to insert himself inside of the woman, so she's in the negative position, whereas the male is his penis being that which protrudes. He's in the repulsive or the positive position. But again, interesting to see these two human beings kind of play out this way biologically. That the body would kind of work in this way where you have these two missing puzzle pieces that have to come together. They have to unite as one. The two have to literally become one flesh. And it is in that moment of unity, in that moment of balance, where life happens, right? And they produce another human being, which is a 50-50 carbon copy of both of them, right? The child is 50% of the mother's DNA and 50% of the father's DNA, right? So it is both the mother and the father, but at the same time, it is neither one. Once again, you have that wave. You have everything, right? You have the mother and the father. You have everything and nothing at the same time, right? The child is a physical, biological representation of the balance of those two equal but opposite forces coming together, right? That's where life happens. That is the sweet spot, the spot where the magic happens, right? So that's fascinating. That's fascinating to see how that actually plays out in biology. How that's a part of who we are as human beings. So sex in that regards is sacred. You know what I mean? Sex is sacred, and it's kind of a shame that in Western society, we live in a society that is fundamentally Christian, right? The founding forefathers, when they came here, bringing Christianity, whether you wanted it or not, right? And so carrying that mindset, they carried with them a lot of the ancient traditions of, looking at sex from a negative perspective. You know what I mean? As something to be frowned upon. Like, you should be celibate, but if you can't, go ahead and marry. Like the priest, the pope, and everybody, they were like they were the main sigma, whatever you want to call it, the stature, for what a person should aspire to. And they were celibate, right? They didn't marry, right? They didn't have wives. And so it was almost as if they're saying, this is what you're supposed to do. This is the perfect man. But if you're weak and you can't endure, if you're not as spiritual as we are, then go ahead and marry. You know what I mean? And then, of course, anyone that wanted to overindulge, that liked sex too much, well, now you had to go to hell, right? So there were all these negative connotations that kind of came with sex and Christianity. And for a long time in America, you had this sexual suppression that kind of went on. You know what I mean? You couldn't, really express your sexuality in any sort of way. And then, that began to change, especially as America, as capitalism began to grow and America became more and more industrialized. And in order to grow the economy and get people buying, you realize that one of the biggest stimulators is sex. And so you have this interesting dichotomy that exists in America, where you have, on the one hand, this fundamental Christian ideal where you're supposed to suppress your sexual inclinations, and then on the other hand, in order to get you to go out and shop and buy products, you have this hypersexualization of everything you see in the world. You know what I mean? Whether it's pizza or a car or a house or whatever it is they're trying to sell you, they find a way to throw sex inside the mix because they want to arouse those desires, and they want you to confuse those desires for impulses to go out and buy and spend money. And it works. It's genius. It works, right? We can question the morals of it, but it does indeed it does work. So it is, it's very complicated. We live in a very, very complicated world. And because of that, and because of all these various distractions that I was just mentioning, there's so much that we don't catch, like what we're talking about right now. This very simple pattern that plays out in biology, between the male and the female, representing the wave, right? A biological wave, right? Physically representing the wave, and the child being that balance between the two, the everything and the nothing at the same time. Um, so yeah, it's really, really fascinating, and I'm gonna end it there. You know what I mean? I just wanted to hit you guys with that little tidbit, a little food for thought, something to think about. The next time that I do a video, and I know that I said I'm going to talk about Nikola Tesla's 369, so hold me to that. Um, I'll tell you what. You know what? We're not going to make any plans. I'm just going to go with the flow. If I do another one of these, whatever I'm feeling at the moment, we'll just kind of kick it. There's a lot. There's so much in the world. I tell people, just get curious. I tell my kids, get curious. You know, the way the world has kind of got us going in a rat race, it's very easy for us to become desensitized and out of tune with some of the simple beauty that surrounds us in everyday nature, and just um, all aspects of life, nature, society itself, just all aspects of life. There's something to learn. So just stay curious. And yeah, if I do another one of these videos, we'll just kick it. We'll see where it goes. Hope to see you guys again. Peace.